everyone, welcome to today's video. I'm Sarah, the omniscient narrator. Today we're going to be discussing a book. Today we're going to be discussing Animal Farm by George Orwell. So I have absolutely no real plans for this video, so I'm just kind of winging it this entire time. So we're going to see what we discuss. I know we're going to at least start with a summary of the book, and then we'll get into some of my thoughts about it, and we'll see where we go from there. So, my copy, here I'll show you. This is my copy. It has an introduction. It has I want to call it post word. What's the actual word? Afterword. That's what it is, by other people besides George Orwell. We're not really going to be discussing those. So I honestly don't care enough about them to discuss it. And it's not the book. Different people's copies have different people's things. So yeah. Um. So Animal Farm. It is, on the surface, it is a book where these farm animals basically push out their farmer and the farmer's family, and then they start to have their own farm and run their own selves. And they started as a rebellion, because they're like, oh, they're oppressing us, they're using us, they're getting all the fruits of our labor, and we're barely getting any. And they want to change that. So then they start to govern themselves basically. And yeah, so um, they do very human things. Like they learn to read and write, and they eventually build things like a windmill. Um, yeah, and they have like meetings and stuff, and they raise a flag and they shoot a gun and they go to war or battle, I guess is the better word, because it's not necessarily war, but it's kind of a war. Um, yeah. So, um, after they start to govern themselves, the pigs are the smartest people, not people, but the smartest animals. They're the first ones to learn to read and write, so they obviously start to, not obviously, but they start to take control of the farm and basically like the leaders. Um, so they write these things called the Seven Commandments, which is like just 7 rules they follow, and they can be summarized by 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. And one thing that gets raised is they're like, birds have 2 legs, and the pigs are like, no, 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 their 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 wings count as legs because they're certainly not arms. Um, so even the birds are included, and yeah, so the two main pigs who take over are Snowball and Napoleon, and they constantly are in disagreement with what they should do. Um, Snowball's like, we should build this windmill, and like has all these plans for it. While on the other hand, Napoleon's like, no, that's a horrible idea. We should keep doing as we are because that's going to require so much extra work. Um, and at one point, Napoleon takes these dogs, these pups that are born, and takes them right from birth from their parents and raises them on his own. So then eventually, once Snowball has all his plans finished for this windmill and it's ready to be like enacted upon, they go to a big vote with all the animals of like, should they build this windmill or not? And it's very like debate style, like American debate style, where they like each go up, give their argument, and then like they'll kind of like rebuttal each other. But so Snowball goes up and is like, hey, this is why we should do this. And everyone's like, yeah, this is a great idea. Napoleon goes up and doesn't really say much, and everyone's a bit confused by this. And Snowball then goes back up and like kind of rebuts this, and it's like, um, well, here's why we should really do it. And then out of nowhere, Napoleon makes this horrifying sound that no one had heard before. And these dogs, these giant, vicious dogs, enters and basically runs Snowball out of the town, out of the farm. And so Napoleon basically takes over. It's basically a dictatorship at this point. But everyone is like, no, this isn't a dictatorship. Like they're denying it. They never use the word dictatorship, but it's basically what it is. And they're all in denial. They're like, no, Napoleon's great. He wants what's best for us, and he's gonna be doing all these things for us. Um, Eventually Napoleon's like, we're gonna build this windmill, and everyone's like, but you said we should not. And he's like, no, 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 no. This was originally my idea, and Snowball stole the idea. This was really my idea. We should really be doing this. And everyone's like, yeah, okay. Napoleon wouldn't lie to us. He's great. Let's do it. And so they start to build the windmill, and this entire time Napoleon's making Snowball out to be the bad guy. Like eventually, at one point, there's a storm, and the windmill falls, and I personally, the way I read it was that it was caused by the storm, because I found it just very coincidental that those two things occurred at the same time. But um, but Napoleon blames it on Snowball. He's like, Snowball doesn't like us. He's like mooching up with the fellow farmers around us, and he he's trying to take us down. He's always been in league with our farmer, and has just never wanted what was best for us. In all honesty, he did what he thought was best for us, which just wasn't the best for us. And so they're like, yeah, Snowball destroyed the windmill, and everyone. So this hatred for Snowball is just starting to build. Um, and we have other important animals who we see a lot. Like we see Molly a lot in the beginning. She is very materialistic. She's like, I kind of like how you were with the farmer. Like I got pretty ribbons and all that. And she doesn't want to work. So eventually she leaves the farm and goes to like another farmer and gets to be all pretty and live her best life, which good for her. But the another important character is Boxer. He is a horse, and he has two mottos. Napoleon is always right, which comes later, and I will work harder. He starts to do things like get up earlier to do more work. He pushes himself to the limit, which eventually leads to his downfall. But we'll get to that in a bit. So yeah, and then another important one is Benjamin. He is a donkey. He's the oldest member on the farm, and he's just kind of vibing. Like he obviously, not obviously, but he has troubles with what Napoleon is doing, but he will not voice them. He is just silent. And I guess he's kind of just hoping for the best, which it never really gets into his motives of why he keeps quiet. But he's also very much like, I'm not going to get into this. I am not going to like support Napoleon and be like, yes, this is a great idea, but I'm also not going to work against him. Um, yeah, so eventually the pigs start to come over take over, and they're basically this regime, and they start to do things like live in the farmhouse, which they said they would never do, and they sleep on the beds, and they're things like that. And they also start to kill other animals, and these are all parts of the things of the seven commandments that are like we're never going to do. Like we're not going to kill other animals, we're not going to use these human things, like we're not going to drink, and they start to drink and all this. But as it's happening, they look at the seven commandments and they're like, oh, we're misremembering them. Like it's like don't drink alcohol, and then it's added to the end in excess. And all the animals are like, I didn't think it had like this in excess on there. Like what? And this other pig named Squealer, he's basically the spokesperson for Napoleon. He goes out and he's like, no, you guys are misremembering. It's always been like this. And the animals trust Squealer, so they're like, okay, maybe you're right. I guess you're right. And so like sometimes like the animals will question Napoleon, and Squealer will come out and be like, no, he wants what's best for you. And they start to use the word comrade. They call him Comrade Napoleon. They call him the leader, and all these things. Eventually, in order to build the windmill, Napoleon has to do business with the humans. And at first, everyone's like, no, we should be self-sufficient. We don't want to deal with the humans. And Napoleon's like, no, this is best for us. We need these supplies to build this windmill, and this windmill is what's best for us. So they eventually have this man, Whymper. He basically is the middleman between the farm and the outside world, and so they start to do things like that. And things happen like the eggs from the hens have to get, like so many eggs, like hundreds of eggs, have to get sent to the outside world for money. And at first the hens are kind of like, you're stealing our children, and there's nothing they can really do about it. Um, so yeah, and then eventually, near the end, um, we'll first get to what happens to Boxer before we get to what really happens at the end. Boxer, of course, he pushes himself, he pushes himself, he pushes himself, and there was like ages for each of the different animals, except for Benjamin, which I noticed, the donkey. He's the only donkey. But there's ages in which they will like retire, and they'll like have this giant field where they can graze and just have a great time. Eventually, this like field is greatly reduced, and Boxer's become the first one who's like reaching that age in which he can reach retirement. And he's like, I don't really know if I'm gonna retire or not. And then his body starts to like feel the weight of all this work he has been doing. And he's like, okay, maybe I will take this retirement. And when there's like a month left before he can retire, he collapses. His body just gives out. And a big part of it is they had a battle, and he got shot. And so that really, I think, helped take him down. And Clover, he's like, I don't know if they're actually like a romantic thing or not, but like she's Elise's best friend. she like tries to take care of him. Benjamin tries to take care of him, and eventually they're like, he needs to go to the hospital. So Napoleon's like, I'm gonna send him to the hospital. And so this van comes, and on it says like, I don't know what exactly it says, but it's basically like we take horses, we slaughter them, we use their body parts for different things like making glue. And I think it was Benjamin who read this to the animals, and the animals were like shocked. They're like, "Oh my goodness! Like, no, he's supposed to go to the hospital, get better. He's not supposed to go off to die." And Squealer tells everyone from Napoleon, he's like, "No, no, no! They bought this cart from people who used to do that, and they just haven't changed the outside of it." And a bunch of the animals are really hesitant, but eventually they're just like, "Okay, whatever." Um, and throughout all this, Napoleon has done things like changed the way they've lived. Like at the beginning they like had Sunday meetings, and then he eventually abolishes them except for like deciding what they're gonna do for the week. And even then he stops showing up to them and has a spokesperson do it for him. And they used to raise this green flag every day and then shoot a gun, and that eventually stops. And they used to have this skull which belonged to, I forget his name, old something. But he was Old Major, that was his name. He was kind of the one who gave them all the idea for this rebellion. And yeah, so they eventually stopped. They used to like pass to school every Sunday as like a remembrance type thing and like a support type thing. And they eventually stopped doing that. They bury the head. And yeah, so all of these changes have been happening. And the animals like sometimes are like, why? We really shouldn't be doing this. And Squealer's like, no, no, it's for the best, it's for the best. And the animals are like, okay, we trust Napoleon, we're gonna go with it. And so at the end, eventually, Napoleon decides to invite other human farmers to the farm and like shows them the farm, shows them how productive they are. And the farmers like having a great time. They're like, yeah, this is great. And so then at the night, they all go back to all the pigs and all the farmers go back to the farmhouse and basically just have this like big dinner party or like getting drunk, all of this. And all of the other animals are very curious as to what's going on, so they sneak over to the farmhouse, and are like listening in. And something they'd noticed before was the pigs were starting to walk on just their hind legs. They were walking on two legs. And that's when you really start to notice, the animals really start to notice like something is wrong. This is not right. We are becoming what we swore not to be. Um, yeah, and so, um, where was I going with this? Yeah, so eventually, let me read the ending to you, because that really stuck with me. Um, I'll read the last paragraph. 12 voices were shouting in anger, and they were all alike. No question now what had happened to the faces of the pigs. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which. So basically, the pigs become exactly what they started off swearing never to be. And that's how it ends. I remember when I read this, my copy has like 152 pages, like numbered pages. Yeah, 152 numbered pages. And this was like, I want to say it was like 131. Sorry, it was 141 was that page I was on, and I'm expecting like another chapter. And then I turn the page, and I see, oh, there's an afterword. This is the end. That was the end of the book. And it was not what I was expecting to be the end of the book. I expected more, and I think a big part of that was because I was expecting another chapter. But after I realized that was the end, I was like, whoa, this is really heavy. This is a really good ending. I like it a lot, and what it is saying about the pigs and what it is saying about the farm. So that's what really happens on a surface level. Now, on a more like satirical um, level, what's really talking about is this was written during Stalin's reign, and this is kind of like a cautionary tale. It's like here's what can happen if we let what Stalin is doing continue. And even then, it's kind of all when it also kind of seems to get to the point where it's like this is what Stalin is doing to these people, and we are romanticizing it, we are supporting it, when really we should not, because this is obviously a bad thing, because they are becoming what they swore not to be. And I think it did that very effectively. I've never read much satirical type things, and this is probably my favorite I have read because I was able to understand that and see that so clearly. So some of my thoughts. Um, I don't know, I kind of like shared my thoughts throughout it. Like I just said, I think the goal that Orwell was going for was done very effectively. And I also really like the ending as a reader and as a writer. It is very heavy and it portrays the message so nicely. Um, I would definitely give this a read. If you haven't, it was a very quick read. It took me like 2 sittings. Um, like I said in my last video, I actually didn't even use a bookmark for this book, and I do not dog ear books. That's a huge no. Because since I read it in 2 readings, I was just like, I'm gonna memorize the page number I was on, and I did that. Um, yeah, so it's a really quick read. It is really good. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. I forget if I already said that. And I don't know if it's necessarily considered a classic, but I would consider it a classic because it's just it's kind of old. It's not old enough to be considered a classic, I guess, but in this day and age, it's kind of old. Because let's see, when was it written? I want to say it was in the 40s. Um, Copyright 46, 1946. Yeah. Um, Something I will actually say, I know I said I wouldn't talk about the introduction afterward, but something I really liked about this introduction, which was written by Tia something. What's her last name? Tia O'Brant. I don't know if I said that right. It was written in 2020, and she's like, yeah, this message isn't really relevant to us anymore. So it's kind of like a fairy tale, which people were saying it was going to be, and what people were classifying it when it was first published. And she's like, yeah, it's just a fairy tale. It doesn't really relate to us anymore. And then she's like, JK, JK. No, this is really relevant to us right now, which I really liked, especially in America, because she's writing from America. And I'm like, yeah, this is relevant. So you may be like, this book is too old to be relevant. No, it is relevant. And I just think it's really worth the read. I think it is really good. It is really well done. And it is really interesting. I don't know if I've ever read a book so fast, like physically the pages. I don't know if I read a page so quickly as I did with this one. And because I would like, usually I'm a bit aware of what page number I'm on, but with this one, I'd like look at the page and I'll be like, okay, I'm on page 31. And then the next thing I know, I'm on page 49. So it was that good. Um, yeah, so I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope you give this book a read. A little bit more about my channel because I meant to do this in my last video and I forgot. First of all, my goal is to do a video at least once a week. A lot of my videos are going to be just reviews of books. Um, and that will at least consist of like my thoughts, maybe as a reader, maybe as a writer, maybe both. But also a summary of the book. So all of these videos will be spoilers. I will mark them as spoilers though. Um, as mentioned before, this is my current read. It is The Divine Comedy this morning. I finally finished the introduction, so I'm really hoping to get into Inferno. And my goal, hopefully, is by the end of next week to finish at least Inferno and then do a review on that. Because this is basically 3 books in one. Because it is Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. And so I want to do each one separately, and then do a video either when I do Paradiso or do a separate video in which I discuss them as a whole. But I will also be doing other things like bookish challenges or like a bookshelf tour when I get back home. And things like that. So if you have any other video ideas, leave them down below. I would love to see them, love to get ideas. Um, yeah, and that's all I really have to say. Thank you for coming to this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. I had lots of fun making it. And yeah, thank you. Bye!